Alright, we're live. Howdy guys, Rex here. Today we're going to review a new optic, okay? And this is by popular request from you guys on one of my last videos, the Nikon M223 video I believe it was. A lot of folks started asking me about primary arms scopes.
I like the horseshoe, the upside down horseshoe open on the bottom.
Now, to tell the truth, I wasn't all that familiar with primary arms until I finally got this one in. And the reason for that is, as you well know, on my channel, I am kind of a scope schnob, okay? With the long-range precision shooting and stuff like that, I acquired a taste for that European glass, that $2,000 and $3,000 stuff, okay? So it's not something that I had honestly kept up with on the market. And a lot of these budget optics are incredible. And I have tested some of the older things because that's what I used to use back in the day. But as far as new budget optics, I'm honestly, some of the new stuff that came out, I kind of missed it. And Primary Arms is one of those new companies that I wasn't familiar with. But after you guys posted all the comments on the Nikon review, Optics Planet was actually kind enough to send this optic for review. So this is from Optics Planet, and they got a lot of stuff on there. You guys should check it out. And they also sent the mount for this optic. Now this is a 30mm scope, and this is mounted on an Armalite AR-10 is what I used to try this bad boy out. And what we have here is a one-piece scope mount by Primary Arms designed for this scope here. And seems to work pretty good if you install it properly. And we'll go over that in a minute here. But what this scope does for you is it provides you with the stuff you're going to need to do long-range shooting without adjusting your turrets. This is kind of a hands-free long-range precision scope, okay? Now, a lot of the scopes that I liked, I spend a lot of money on those things so that I get turret tracking that is dead-on accurate, okay? When you're talking about reliable turret tracking that are going to be accurate with the graduation of the adjustments. So when you turn in one of these elevation and windage turrets for extreme long range applications where you're dialing in your firing solution, it has to be like perfectly designed, perfectly assembled, and everything's got to be exactly right for it to even kind of work at all. So you're going to spend a lot of money, at least $1,000 on a scope that's going to have reliable turret tracking that's done with perfect graduation, okay? And that's going to be very hard to find. However, this scope is like in that $300 range. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And there's different models available, and the prices fluctuate a little bit over time, I'm sure. But if you look at this thing, what we have here is a situation where everything is done in the reticle, okay? And so the reticle design is what's going to save you from having to turn the turrets. And it's also going to speed you up, too. Now, in the 101 series, a lot of folks did ask me my opinion on reticles of this style. The R-grid reticle gives you the grid network underneath your aiming point, so you can apply very quick holdovers and wind hold-off values. And it's a little bit of a busy reticle, and for the purposes of what we were tackling at the time, extreme long-range precision shooting, in my opinion, there were some other scope configurations that were more well suited for that particular application of fire, where you're going to have one shot and you want to eliminate all your variables that you have to worry about in your head at extreme long ranges. So if you're taking a shot at 1,500 meters, you're going to want to dial in all your atmospheric conditions, your drop, all your different variations on the elevation turret, so that you don't have to worry about it, because there's going to be other things that come into play. If the target is animate, it's going to start moving. If a tiny bit of a breeze changes, you're going to have to correct for that. So by adjusting all that stuff on your optic, it would eliminate a lot of those variables at extreme long ranges, which would streamline the process for you doing your corrections in the field. Now, for other applications of fire, as a general crossover scope from long-range precision shooting to more of a designated marksman application, where you're going to be running around with a battle rifle taking shots quickly and you don't have time to do math, those kind of scopes, a designated marksman scope is going to have a reticle, probably with a ballistic drop compensating reticle in it, okay? And that's going to give you a zero math kind of a operation, and you're not going to have to worry about a math equation. It's not going to give you as precise of a correction as if you were to custom dial it in or custom hold over in pure angular measurements so that you can go off your firing tables, but it's going to get very quick. So this is a crossover scope between that extreme long-range precision shooting, where you're going to dial stuff in on your $3,000 scope with the turrets that work really good, and your designated marksman scopes, where you're going to be able to apply a very quick hold-off. Now, the nice thing about the R-Grid, it kind of gives you some of both worlds, okay? So you're going to be able to completely be hands-free when you're applying your hold-off values. You're not going to have to be cranking on your scope. You're not going to have to remember where you're at in terms of dialing your elevation. You're not going to have to mess with that. You're not going to have to worry about if the tracking is exactly perfect, okay? Now, on budget rifle scopes, that's one of the issues you're going to run into, is it's very hard on any budget scope, under $1,000 even, to get graduation precision in terms of tracking. A lot of scopes can get tracking reliability, which means that wherever it ends up, if you go to number 6 on the scope, it's going to be pretty close to 6 mils, but it's at least going to be reliable. It's going to get you there reliably. It might not be exactly 6 mils, but it'll get you there reliably. So some budget optics can pull that off. But when we're talking about this kind of a design, it's nice because the reticle is laser etched in the glass. So if you have all your mils of holdover and hold off in the scope, in the laser etching on the glass, that's like 100% reliable. You don't have to worry about stuff adjusting properly, because all you're going to do is you're going to zero this scope at 100 yards or 100 meters or whatever your zero is going to be, and once it's zeroed, you kind of leave it alone. And from there, when you get a target up, you're going to look at your ballistic tables, and you're going to apply the proper amount of holdover and hold off. Very similar process in terms of calculating your firing solution that you would do like we practice in the Sniper 101 series. You can get as precise as you need to be, but it's going to be an instantaneous holdover. So you're not going to have to worry about your turrets. So that's kind of the neat thing about a reticle if it's designed smart, okay? Now, this style of reticle is not anything new to the world. However, it is more new to precision rifles and rifle scopes. These kind of reticles were used for a long time in army tanks and stuff, especially in the East Bloc countries. Very similar reticle pattern here. And there's been a few different companies that kind of came out with them and kind of popularized them, if you will, in terms of rifle scope usage, and really did a good job advertising and explaining how that's kind of an advantageous design. So the R-Grid reticle is a pretty decent reticle. And one of the things that we discussed when we talked with one of the engineers of Primary Arms, I actually wanted to find some more information out, so we were able to interview him. And if you guys want to go to rexreviews.org, we have a podcast show every week where we talk about all kinds of long-range stuff, give you a lot of real detailed information. But in the last episode that we're uploading here very soon, we did talk to the engineer, and we kind of picked his brain on some of the math required to get the reticles done correctly, because that's tricky. There's certain things when you're talking about laser etching a reticle in the glass it's just not automatically good. You have to account for your focal length properly, and you have to understand your math in order to accomplish that with any degree of precision. And with the primary arms, their engineers do know what they're doing in terms of the math on the reticles, and then after they cut them, and they design them and they get the prototypes made, they thoroughly vet those things to make sure they really are accurate in terms of their measurements. So when you get one of these bad boys in a first focal plane, no matter what power setting you're on, that reticle is going to give you your mil hash marks, and your grid pattern, it's going to be precise. It's going to be right on. So this scope, for less than $1,000, for right in that $300 price range, is going to give you 100% reliability in terms of applying ballistic holdover and hold off, and you're going to be able to do it instantaneously in the field. You don't have to turn the knobs. So for guys who are looking for an optic in that configuration, there's actually a lot of really successful experts that kind of push that reticle design. And for certain applications of fire where you're going to be in a hurry, or where you might need to make a quick follow-up shot, you're going to have that opportunity. A grid pattern reticle like this, and like the Horus design reticles, they're all very similar, is going to be very advantageous. And so it's not something that I'm against for that application. That's a very good design for that application. It's just so that people understand what I was talking about in the 101 series. There's different applications of fire for different things, folks. But this scope is kind of neat. It does have the target turrets available on it, okay? And that's a popular feature that they did want to add, because some people are going to use the turrets. Now, one thing to consider when you're talking about turrets on these scopes is that, like I said before, unless you spend a couple grand, it's very difficult to get these things to operate with precision, especially when you're talking about the graduation accuracy, okay? If you want the turret to be in exactly a mil level of adjustment all the way out to the edge of your adjustment range, there are certain methods of construction of scopes that make them more precise. And in order to pull that off, they have to spend a lot of money. There's more parts involved and a lot more labor and expertise that goes into verifying that those parts are properly fitted, okay? That's where the big money comes from when you spend money on a tier 1 precision rifle optic that's in the couple $1,000 category. The parts are very similar in construction, it's just that they're all very thoroughly checked to make sure that they are going to all work together to get you a precise adjustment. Now, like we said earlier, the reticle eliminates all that in this scope. So that's how they can give you a scope that's in that $300 price range that's still going to work with 100% precision, is because you're not adjusting anything. So that's a neat thing. But with the turrets on here, I was originally of the opinion that it would be nice to have no target turrets on this, because it's going to encourage you to dial up and down and all that on the scope when should be using the reticle. The reticle is really where the gold of this thing is. So you should be applying holdover with the reticle design like this. So I originally thought that maybe the turret shouldn't be on there, until I realized, because I forgot, I got an AAC suppressor that I run on this particular rifle. And you can see this is an Armalite AR-10 with a real skinny pencil barrel on it. Now this thing shoots good. It's like a minute of angle, a little bit less. It's not bad for a skinny barreled AR-10 with just M80 ammo or whatever I shoot out of it all the time. So it shoots straight, but when you attach that suppressor, it pulls down enough. It throws it off 2.5 mils. That's a lot. That's a lot of a throw off for that suppressor. So when I run my suppressor on here and I take it off, all of a sudden it's shooting way high. And that's like really annoying, right? So what I did is I thought, you know, actually that turret's kind of nice, because this scope did give me reliability in the tracking, which means that when I moved it a certain amount, it did at least reliably and repeatably go there. In terms of doing a box test, there's no reason to run a budget scope through a box test, because it's not going to work, okay? If you want to do box tests, you're going to do that on your scopes that are designed to be used with your turrets, with a high-end precision rifle optics and stuff like that. But this thing did work for me in terms of attaching the suppressor. I zeroed it with the suppressor attached. So I slipped my scales to 0, and so now if I put my suppressor on there, all I got to do is turn this target turret, and I don't have to mess around with any lens cover or turret covers or anything. I just turn it to 0 and I'm set for the suppressor. If I detach it for whatever reason, who knows why, I simply remember that, okay, I just cranked down 2.5 mils and then I'm zeroed, right? And the lateral change wasn't that much. It's just so heavy it pulled down. So for those guys running a suppressor, or if you're one of those guys that's going to be running different kinds of ammo, for example, if you, a lot of times you got a bunch of cheap M80, 150 grain full metal jackets or 147 grain FMJs, and you're shooting them out of here, you're going to have a zero in one spot, right? But if you want to upgrade to your 168 grainers, your point of impact might shift, right? So a target turret's going to give you multiple ammo compatibility. And with the reliability of the tracking, you can just put a little mark on there with a Sharpie, or you can write it down on a piece of paper, you can put it in your pocket, you can just remember where in the heck your different ammo was at. So the target turret's nice because if you change ammo, you can simply adjust your zero. Now you're zeroed for that ammo, and that reticle is all ready to go for whatever your drop calculations are going to be using that ammo. So the target turrets are actually useful, even though it's not going to pass a real stringent box test. Although when I did move it, zeroing the rifle, it was like within one click usually. Sometimes it was like one click off. That's 1/10 of a mil. That's not a lot. But in terms of OCD level detail, extreme long range precision shooting, you probably want something a little more reliable if you're going to be using the turrets. But 1.1 mils off is not that bad for most practical applications. But if it's repeatable and you just remember how much you had to adjust it to get zeroed, then it's not a deal because you're not going to be using this for applying ballistic holdovers. And the Illumination does work pretty good. If you look at the horseshoe reticle, that's designed in a first focal plane scope. When you back off on the reticle and it gets real far away and skinny, it's really hard to see. And a lot of guys complain, especially if you're doing a fast shot at close range. You want to be able to see the reticle, so that big horseshoe design, when illuminated especially, is very visible. So on your lower powers, that horseshoe is going to give you a real nice image of that sight. You're going to be able to just get right on, even in low light conditions. If you're hunting hogs or something and they're coming at you trying to bite your ankles off, you should be able to kind of get on target. So it should help you there. Now, if you look closely at this reticle design, and you zoom all the way in on the reticle, what you're going to see is on the center of that horseshoe, you have a little chevron, okay? That's really handy for a first focal plane optic. One complaint of first focal plane is when you zoom all the way in on your higher power magnifications, all of a sudden your crosshairs gets kind of crude. It gets kind of thick, and it might obscure a small target. Now, if you're varmint hunting, or if you're shooting at really tiny targets, or shooting at really long distances, it's nice to have a smaller aiming point. And the ingenious thing about having the chevron design aiming point is that when you're establishing your rifle zero, you're going to have the scope cranked all the way up to 14 power so that you can get close in there and get a real good zero. And it's not going to obscure your little bullseye because you have that chevron. It's infinitely small, right? Or if you're shooting at a real small target like a prairie dog's head or something peeking out of the hole, something like that, if you're going to be using it for varmint hunting, that's an infinitely small point on there. It's fractional geometry. No matter how far you zoom it in, it's always going to be that sharp. It's going to be that small. So it's like a masterful design. And it's so simple. It's funny more people didn't think of that, right? But the primary arms did pull it off there. So I got to give the reticle design my kudos here. That's a pretty smart design. If you guys need something and you don't want to mess with the turrets, or if you're on a budget and you can't afford a target scope or a tactical high-end tier 1 rifle scope like we talk about in the 101 series, but you still want to have the ability to precisely adjust your fire in terms of milliradians, this is a good way to go. The R-grid reticle is going to get you there, okay? And a lot of guys, like I said before, actually do push that. A lot of the professionals win a lot of competitions against other guys in terms of speed and accuracy using reticles of this style, okay? So it is a very formidable design. Now, for those guys who want my opinion on the overall quality of the scope, okay? Now, this is even though it's a $290 scope or $300 some scope, depending on exactly which model you get and which package you get, it actually is a pretty good value in terms of quality. I think And there have been other little birdies that have told me, and I've done some research, I've beat the bushes a little bit for you guys on this. This is made in some of the same manufacturing facilities as some of the other competitor scopes that are very popular that cost like a lot more. Okay? I gotta be honest with you guys, there's other scope brands that I like out there that are in the budget range. You know, I'm talking the $600-800 range, maybe $500 range, that are very comparable to this. And actually so comparable, it's almost like exactly the same quality because it's maybe made in the same place by the same folks, okay? So this is a good value, okay? And I think when I was talking to some of the people down there, I was able to talk to a couple different folks at Primary Arms when I was doing research on this. One of the reasons is the way they go straight to the factory. They cut out a lot of the middlemen when it comes to sourcing out who's going to build what, and the engineers and the people who, you know, it's kind of a process for these big optics companies. They hire a lot of people to do a lot of things. So there's a lot of that adds up in the cost. And then there's a significant markup as well, too. Everyone wants to make money, right? Primary Arms seems to want to keep the price low. I think that's a smart business move, actually, because, I mean, you can still make a lot of money if you just sell way more scopes because it's a way better value, right? So in terms of overall quality, in terms of the tracking, how it felt, and how the clicks felt, and in terms of the precision of the tracking, which was real close, not exactly perfect, but the reliability of the tracking was half decent on this particular test model we have here. I can say that this is going to be very comparable to scopes in the $500-600 price range. Some other major, very well marketed scopes that you're going to find over the counter in a lot of stores that a lot of people are really die-hard about. This is basically going to give you the same quality for a lot less money. So that's the quality issue. The glass quality, with the reticle is really nice. It's very crisp, very sharp. So the reticle, you're definitely going to get a perception of quality there. In terms of glass quality, if you're a schnob like me, it's a scope that's under $1,000. So it's not going to give you apochromatically corrected glass. But if you're used to normal sporting optics, it's pretty nice. In terms of quality, like I said again, it's going to give you that $500 scope quality glass, which is, it's all right. It's not tier 1, it's not that super extra warm, glorious German glass that I kind of do like, but it's definitely not going to hinder you. One thing I did notice is that on the range, when you're talking about your sight picture in the scope here, if we could use that term in optics, it's a little bit fussy on exactly where you have your head behind the optic. It's just a design parameter. Some of the dimensions and how they work out the lenses and the focal lengths and all that. Some of them, there's a tighter eye box, if you will. You really got to get your head really centered behind there. For me, it was not an issue. If you're a person who shoots a scoped rifle growing up, like a deer hunter, it's not going to be an issue. You're not even going to really notice it, okay? But if you're running around a lot and you're not on a low power, you'll notice a little bit, you know. It's not it's the only thing really worth mentioning in terms of negative, I suppose. It's a little more fussy than some other scopes I played with in that category, but it's once you get behind it, it's a nice crisp image all around. The glass quality is decent. It works good. It's not going to blow your dress up or anything in terms of glass quality if you're used to like the Swarovski or the Zeiss scopes or the Schmidt & Bender, right? But in terms of normal optics that normal people afford, it's a good scope. So, with that being said, let's look at the mount, okay? Now I gotta confess something here. I did destroy the first mount that they gave me, okay? I did get a little Western on it. At the Rex Reviews project here, I do like to give things the thorough battle testing. And when I was mounting this, that's what I did. You don't want to crank on these too much, and you don't want to ever forget to read the instructions on anything, okay? It's aluminum. And it's an aluminum that's not like maybe your super high-tech aircraft grade aluminum. So a guy gets a feel over time of how much torque you can apply. And I wasn't using a torque wrench, and there actually are torque specifications to this. And if you go over those torque specs, you might strip it out, okay? Just be aware of that. That's normal stuff that normal people would know. But you'd be surprised how many people twist off the threads when they're mounting. And I'm talking about these big ones here that mount it to the Picatinny, to the rail here. See? And yeah, I stripped them off. One thing you can do is once you finger tighten this, you get it finger tight, and once you feel it really kind of bottom out, once you feel it kind of touch, you get a wrench on there and you turn it another 180 degrees. That's half a turn. If you do that, you're set, okay? That's actually what the instruction manual was called for after I destroyed it and then read the instructions. So, note to you guys, I already tested it for you. Don't get too Western on the torque specs. It's always counterproductive. Stuff is engineered for a reason with specific, different kinds of metal is going to grip better, and it's not going to grip better when you strip the threads off. And also, you got an aluminum base here. There's no reason to really crank her down like I tried. But I did try it for you. And as you can see, this scope is able to be mounted and still have room for my pop-up sights here. And these are kind of big, bulky suckers too. These are Midwest Industries, I believe. And so we do have space there. So it did work just fine. So that's a nice feature there. If this is something you guys think you dig, go ahead on Optics Planet and they will have this and lots of other stuff for you too. And if you apply the coupon code, which I will include in the commentary of the video and under the video description, will get you a little bit of a discount. Optics Planet was pretty sweet when they gave this to me to test, and they gave me a coupon for you guys. So if you go there, you're going to save, I think it's like 5% off your entire order there. So that's not a bad deal. If there's other stuff you want to buy, other peripheral optical equipment, they got a whole bunch of stuff on there. It's sometimes nice to order all the stuff you need on one place rather than multiple places and paying the shipping and handling and worrying about stuff getting shipped different or whatever. So they got a lot of stuff. Go check it out. Go stumble around on their website and they'll get you hooked up. And thanks to Optics Planet for letting you guys see this bad boy. And thanks to Primary Arms for all the information he gave me on this. And actually, I do have more Primary Arms reviews coming out soon. Primary Arms did get a hold of me directly, and they sent me some more stuff to review. So I got this big sucker here that we're going to try out. This is a 6-30. This is like their Platinum series, and that's a whole nother animal. You guys are going to be curious about that. This is not a budget scope on here. This is not the scope you're going to get at Walmart, if you will, okay? This is like a really nice optic, actually, and I was surprised when I got it in. So you're going to be curious what I have to say on that. And I also am going to try out some of their other stuff, their ACSS reticles. I have one mounted up on a 300 blackout. You guys are going to dig it. So stay tuned.
But she hits me, disassembles my leg. So I went to the doctor and he gave me a leg. Now she waits, slumber, just dreaming. Hope that she kills instead of leaving with me. Though she's a minefield, she'll watch your body from the soul.